Hello, 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 hello. Hey, Miss Alexis, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dr. Still?
I am great. I am wonderful, and I see you in your pink. I see you. I see you. You've been pink. I get it. I get it.
Yes, you
And,
did.
well, Alexis, as you know, I'm always so proud of you. I'm so thankful for you of being the next generation that's, you are breaking glass ceilings for us. When I say for us, for women my age, older, and as well as younger than yourself in the hemp industry. And so this is your show. This is where you're going to do your shining and you're going to educate people on exactly what hemp is about, what legislation, what we need to do, the solution. This is what I call this show. The solution that you're going to bring from your generation, exactly what we need to do and how fast we need to do it. So without further ado, all of you that are listening in, I have here with you or with us Miss Alexis Harris from Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to further turn it over to her and let her do all of her accolades and everything about Miss Alexis.
Well, greetings and thank you, Dr. Still, for having me on your show today. Thank you to the National Women in Agriculture. A special shout out to the Georgia Women in Agriculture, Miss Noreen, and all of our ladies here in the state of Georgia, as well as everybody across. I was going to say the nation, but we are now international, so I have to get used to saying global. All of our global family, a part of the organization. So, thank you for extending this platform for me here today to speak with you all about the emerging industry of hemp. You'll hear me say hemp and cannabis interchangeably because they are from the same plant family. They're two different types of the same plant, essentially. A lot of people break it down in different ways depending on what their background is, as far as if you're a chemist or a lab technician, you may speak to the chemical components of the plant. If you're in agriculture, you may break it down based off of the plant structure. And so basically, the difference between hemp and cannabis is the potency of THC. So some hemp has extremely low THC value, which is a psychoactive chemical that the plant makes naturally. Both the hemp and cannabis plant do make this chemical. However, hemp has lower concentrations of this chemical, and marijuana, also known as weed or cannabis, has higher contents of THC, which is the psychoactive component. So, when we're talking about hemp, we're talking about the non psychoactive plant that doesn't get you high. Although some strands of hemp can have higher levels of THC than industrial hemp usually has, that would not make you high even still. So, this notion that hemp will get you high is not an accurate notion unless we're talking about Delta 8. And that's a conversation that we'll have a little bit further into this discussion today. But I thought it was important for us to, one, identify the difference between cannabis, i.e., weed, and hemp, which we'll be primarily talking about today as an agricultural commodity, a nutraceutical, and a pathway for industrial sustainability. Is there anything you'd like to ask in between there?
Most definitely. And as we see people come in and ask questions, I want to pause so you can answer them right on the spot because I don't want it to go. We get so far down almost to the end and we run out of time. We want to make sure that we go ahead and give them time to ask the question as well as you to give your professional expertise answer.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you tell me? I know that you're totally in the hemp industry, but can you give your specification as far as what is your specialty in the industry of agriculture?
So the interesting part is I have a hard time answering this question because there's so many things I have to do because this is an emerging industry. So a lot of things that you think should or would be there, they're not. As far as when you go to each state, they have committees and you're expecting for them to have answers about, well, what should your farmers be doing in this state? What genetics should they be using? Who should be their lab technicians? A lot of times those answers aren't there because those staff members have not been trained or a part of the emerging industry component. And so, as a business professional trying to get clarity for farmers, we have to not only engage with these people, we have to also educate them about what it is we're talking about. And so, to clearly answer your question, I
Mhm.
do education events, which could be found on my event a lot of times collaboratively with nonprofit organizations like ours, or advocacy groups specifically for cannabis or hemp, so we can have collaborative conversations about what's needed for us to continue to push forward, for farmers to be in a position to make money off of this crop versus getting raped like they have with every other agricultural commodity. And so we have to educate the farmers. We have to educate the lobbyists. We have to educate the politicians. We have to educate doctors. We have to educate community members. We have to educate consumers. And the best way to do that is in a holistic manner. And so we do that in forums, seminars, engagement opportunities. And we also make sure we brand why we do these opportunities. So, business owners who have invested into this industry are
Mhm.
being positioned to not be left behind once big pharma or huge corporations come into the industry. So, simply put, I'm an advocate in this industry. I am a consultant in this industry to help people with their strategic planning. And I also make sure the community is engaged in the processes as they continue to make policy for business owners and for consumers.
So, I mean, you summed it all up. You wear three different hats. I'm hearing you loud and clear. An advocacy, a consultant, as well as a community educator. With all of this, what exactly is needed as far as for the small farmer to be, and I'm going to say this on a large scale, nationally, because we understand from our last speaker last week, every state is different as far as the licensing costs
That's
and
right.
all that. You guys have been educating me so much, and I'm so excited because I'm like, I'm ready to go some hemp. I want to get into hemp. So, what do we need? And where I'm trying to go, because I want us to really drill down, and by the time we end this show, that we have something in place, seminars in place, where we're going to be on Capitol Hill, either on a state level or on a federal level. What do we need to do to make sure all farmers on a nationwide level will be participants in this industry, in this
The
billion-dollar industry?
That's right. $1 trillion industry,
Okay,
really.
trillion.
Yes,
Okay.
because it's industrial and it's a sustainability option. Right now, people are just talking about oils and biomass, which is plant matter. We haven't even gotten to hempcrete and clothing and all of these things because we simply do not have the machinery here for these actions. So although people promote we could do all of these great things with hemp, there's a large financial investment that has to be made into machinery and facilities, which I believe there's one that's supposed to be emerging on the West Coast very soon to be able to do one part of processing, but there's a whole line of
Yes.
actions that have to happen to make an end product. So just because this one processing facility is about to open doesn't mean the entire distribution chain is solidified as far as machinery
Wow.
and the skill set on how to use these machines, because really it's a concept. These machines haven't been in the United States for hundreds of years. And so there's a learning curve that has to happen. Even how do you ship them here? How do you get them here? So there's so many things people are skipping over before we started these state growing programs, which
Mhm.
I'm happy we have. But I hate to be the person to have to tell farmers, like, hey, farming's probably not what you should jump into to initially get into this industry.
Right.
I've got a lot of backlash from farmers for saying that. It's like, I'm a good farmer. I could grow these genetics. Why shouldn't I be the one to grow it? But when it's time for harvest and they have nowhere to properly store it,
Hmm.
and they have nowhere to liquidate their products because people are asking them, well, what is hemp? Or what can this do for me? Or what does this even mean for me?
Mhm.
They realize there's a whole level of education that has to happen in addition to them trying to bottle their product, brand their product, and figure out
Wow.
that whole process. So It's really putting the cart before the horse as a farmer to just jump into farming because you're good at it and you heard hemp is going to be $1 million crop. The
Right,
fact of the matter is, a lot of farmers, in the Midwest are committing suicide at a higher rate than combat veterans
right.
because they're burning their crops. They're losing money. They're
Yes.
getting beat by the government essentially like through testing costs. For instance, in Georgia, there were some farmers who expressed to me that they spent more money on the testing of a piece of their crop than the
Mhm.
entire crop itself.
Wow. And
So
that's
those,
a hemp crop we were talking about, or okay, a hemp crop.
yes, a hemp crop.
Wow.
It was like, I believe it was like 2,500 in total for that one plot of
Tested.
hemp. Right. And they didn't even spend that amount to do the crop of hemp itself. And this was a small plot. So with problems like that happening, it would by design leave the farmer at a deficit. And so to clearly answer your question, farmers must get together,
Mm-hmm.
have conversations and strategize what would a processing network look like, a successful one, because processing is a problem even beyond hemp, is what I learned through this specific organization. When it comes to cattle, when it comes to dairy, when it comes to even cotton, I just found out about discriminatory practices with cotton grading and, all of that. What could go into apparel and what cannot, and the price differentiation, even with that.
Mm-hmm.
Processing is a bottleneck for farmers in general. So now that we have this new commodity, it's important that farmers ensure policy. Policy has to align with the actions we want to see, because simply stating it should be this way that's not how laws work. And we know that's how historically farmers in particular of color have been put at a
Yes.
disadvantage. It's
Right.
contractually and through policy.
Most definitely. Right there, I want to put a pin in there and talk about policy. Is there anything in place, right? Any legislation do you know of on a federal level that even remotely assists small farmers or minority farmers to even get involved? Like any type of law, any legislation that's there.
And I'm gonna be honest. I usually leave legislative conversations to my dad because he is the official lobbyist, Georgia Hemp Association. That's who we work
Yes.
with. But I am not aware of any legislation that would protect a. I hate to even just limit it to minority farmers, because
Small
the
farmers.
group of people who are in the hemp industry is a minority group, in the sense of, it's like maybe
Right.
100 farmers who could really be effective in educating people nationwide, um, in
Wow.
comparison to right. That's a
That's
very
huge.
small number.
So, would it be fair that we need to start to form a coalition, a hemp coalition? Um,
Absolutely.
I think that is a conversation that we need to have next week, opening up the new year. The ones who are listening in, we will definitely put something out there immediately. You know
That's
I am, Alexis. I mean, the thing is that I like to do things that's intentional. I am not of the generation, if you will, that I'm not into talking. I'm not into all the big strategy. You and I have known each other for years. Your dad, I've met your father, who's an expert, like you said, in legislation. You're very knowledgeable, as anyone could see. You know it inside and out what needs to be done. So, with starting, just getting a coalition together of hemp producers or hemp people who want to get involved in hemp,
that's
and get some petitions signed and get some congressional leaders, because that's where we have to start, as
hmm
well as our state leaders, to get involved and get something in draft, give a deadline for that, and get something presented immediately. Because again, it will be where we are and what our organization is working on. I'm going to kind of leave and come back to what we're talking about. We're working on something that no one has touched upon since 1914, where we were left out. When I say we, minority women and minority children have been left from the table. Even currently, we're being left from the table, just because women, again, do not have true advocacy on a national level. So here we are again, coming back through hemp, trying to be intentional and get something done immediately. And I would gladly support you all. I'm not going to say, I will get it started as far as our organization being one of the stakeholders, if you will, and getting it started and making sure whatever you need on behalf of our organization, I'm willing to commit to that because I believe in the hemp industry in itself, just in the education I've learned in the last month, that we have to have it. We have to, in order to be self-sustaining as well as productive people in general, just being able to be somewhat prosperous or being able to be economically sound. That's the best way I can put it. So, getting back on track, I want to talk to you a little bit about your personal background. Are you a first generational farmer, or where are you in the whole farming industry as far as the?
I would like to backtrack just really quick. We are working on an initiative with a major company, a national company, to
Mhm.
start an education initiative. And of course, our organization is in the mix of that conversation. You have been, um, talking with us about a couple of things, and Miss Noreen as well. So that is definitely something already in the works. So once we get that
Yes.
solidified, we'll be able to connect and officially announce the opportunity for hemp with people of color and in the agricultural sector specifically.
Well, that is, again, you definitely have our support of whatever I can do to bring on more, because I don't want to leave anyone behind on this. That's
Right.
the reason that this show is, I saw the need because we have to be real, intentional, and consistent weekly to make sure people are being fed information and know what's going on out there to understand they need to get involved in hemp. Yes, you need to grow your own food, but if you really understand it, you need to make sure hemp is part of your food production.
That part. Yes, we definitely
Talk
have
to
to
me
talk
about that
about
part.
that.
Talk to me about that food
Yes.
part.
A lot of people don't look at hemp as a food source, but it's a green leafy herb, so you can juice it. You could take the leaves and put it in salad. It's a
Mm.
number of ways you can consume it without it being a smokable. So for people to even consider it just like, weed, it's like, no, this could be salt. In Florida, certain Whole Foods sell the leaves
Oh my
specifically
goodness,
for
and
it to
that's
be
a
a
good
salad.
something good to know. Whole
Yeah.
Foods grocery store chain sells the actual leaves as a nutrient.
This
It's
is what I
good.
was told in Florida. Yes, this is what they do. And I have a friend
I
here
have
in
been
Georgia
saying
named
this research
Aviva.
there.
Aviva is the number one component, a number one advocate for this. She's been pushing for
Oh,
this for years because she juices it. She puts it in her salad. She rolls sushi up with her seaweed
yes.
sometimes. Like she gets very creative with her leaves. Very
So
cool.
tell me, how do you know the content of the THC that's in the actual hemp? That's what scares me because I don't want to get high. I want the health, I want the health aspect of it or the nutrients from it. I don't want the
Well,
stimulation.
remember we said at the beginning, hemp will not get you high, even
Right.
unless it has 18% or higher. Which a lot of hemp farmers, I don't, they're not experiencing 18%. Otherwise, they're doing good. They're actually doing good with their planting strategies, essentially, because that means they're stretching the genetics beyond what it's supposed to do. So that means they're doing a great job.
Right.
However, hemp generally does not get you high, so that's not something you have to worry about. But the way you find out is through laboratory testing, and there's not a lot of labs. There's just not. As far
Another
as,
piece of it.
do you know where to send a product right now to get it lab tested? Just
No.
irrespective of hemp, like, do you send your little Debbie snack cakes for lab testing?
Right. No.
Do we send our McDonald's for lab testing? Our Burger King.
Right.
What's in those meat patties? So
See,
even when people start that conversation, I'm like, there's a lot of things that can be made in the kitchen with hemp that you wouldn't have a commercial uh, business model attached to. And I advocate for that as well because as we talk about policy, We need to ensure that there are some at-home safeguards as far as you should not, as a patient who can
Mhm.
go grow your own medicine, be forced into capitalism,
Right,
essentially.
right, most definitely no.
But if you plan on redistributing that, then yes, you need to go get it lab tested. But to my point of, if we're going to hold these standards for plants to
Yeah.
have to be so extremely lab tested, we should probably do the same for Cheetos, soda, fast food, and everything else from a
Well,
policy level.
so FDA, I'm going to kind of go there. They're not involved in this. So are they involved or are they not involved in this? As far as the USDA, like certain foods and certain things could come into the United States and have to be USDA approved. Is that the same with cannabis slash hemp?
So the USDA and FDA are basically hands off right now. As far as
Oh, see, that's
legally, you're not supposed to have CBD in food or drink products.
okay.
That is not allowed through the Hemp Farm Bill Act. But as we see, there is CBD in food and drink products. That's
Exactly.
happening. It's a thing. They're kind of treating it like nutraceuticals in a sense of, like how you go to GNC and some of
Mhm.
the things have an asterisk and it says this has not been FDA approved.
Most definitely, yes.
So that's
It's the
where
same
we're at.
concept. Okay,
Right.
okay.
We're in a
It
gray
has,
area. But if you have like gummies as a supplement, that's technically allowed. It's a gray area. It's an emerging industry. And that's why I said policy really has to align with the actions that we want to see, which is why farmers and producers in general have to start having these conversations on what should that policy look like to protect you, because it's not going to be through business to business transactions that determine where the
not at
industry is
all.
going. It's going to be policy.
Policy.
Similar to vape pens. Vape pens were extremely popular. In
Mhm,
Georgia, people opened up vape shops. They went and bought all of the cartridges, and then boom, a bad news story happened. They're getting banned left and right, and their investment went straight into the trash. The
wow.
market and policy did not align with that type of growth, but because they were making money, they
Mhm,
ignored all of those factors and said, I'm making money, but didn't know that their investment was going to go in the trash so fast without any warning to them, because the FDA comes in and goes, hey, well, what's in these cartridges? And is that vitamin C in there? And is it causing scarring in the lungs? And just, the programming of these are not safe. They didn't just say it's not safe. They created a whole program, on TV about how unsafe these things were. So
mhm.
naturally, the sales diminished, that opportunity diminished. So if farmers don't get together now and say, hey, we need to make sure that if we grow hemp, we're
Mhm,
part of the end product. Make sure you guys take a note of that. If you
mhm.
grow hemp, don't just give your hemp away or just sell it off, because
Right.
you will not make the most money. If
Say that
making
part again. That part, like you said, that part. Say that again. Make sure you understand what.
that you need to be a part of the end product process. That's even value added products to your farm is a thing. So
Well,
why
that's
not?
that's where the small farmer has lost out because they don't. They just sell it. They don't know where it goes from there, and that's where you, your generation, as well as myself and the organization, we're trying to break those doors down to make sure we are a part of that ending product because
That's right.
therefore we have investment in it,
That's
and
right.
that is revenue, and you build your empires. That's generational wealth, and making sure that we educate, especially the new generations going forward, that they understand that you have to be involved and know from the beginning to the end where you what you're producing. That's your product. That's just like if you make a clothing,
That's
you're
right.
going to put your brand on it. It's so unfortunate, but it's such a blessing at the same time that we are educated and know enough to try to do something about it. The farm bill, the new farm bill, I don't know when it comes out again. It was in 2018.
Yeah, it came
So
out in 2018.
it'll be coming up every 5 years the farm bill comes. So it's real important that we do have something in place and introduced immediately to get some legislation written if they really want what they call it, inclusion and equality and inclusion, that's the buzzwords for government right now. Higher government is specifically, when I say that, that's federal equality and inclusion. So it behooves us, if you will, if we don't have these conversations and get some things to the table immediately. I think it's really important. I know in January a lot of things take place, and I
Yes.
know January is very, very important that we get things in place. I'm going to switch more again into your personal life. Do you feel the color of your skin has caused you, colors your skin as well as your gender, have caused you some setbacks in this industry? And if so, why? Or who? If you and you don't have to give us specific, give us kind of an example. You don't have to like don't name anyone because I don't want anyone to come back and sue me for slander and defamation.
Right, right. I don't operate like that. I operate in
Not at
love.
all. That's your not. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm very professional.
Ultimately, I feel like it's twofold. And I'm
Mhm.
usually very transparent about this because when I first started, um, it was just to help my dad. I realized he was on to something. Something was a little off with his verbiage. He was talking to the good old boys and he kept saying words that made them do this. And I'm like, Dad, we got to use a different word, to
Mhm.
get the same job done. And so, with saying that, maybe my skin color did play a part in it, but then I used it to my advantage in
Most
the
definitely.
sense of if there's not a lot of people that look like you in the industry, that kind of makes you the one that people would want to speak to because they're not used to having that experience. And
Right.
then to have that experience with somebody who's open to having dialogue with them versus charging them with something, like you are this, it was more so like, what's going on with you?
Mm-hmm.
That was my approach in going to the hemp farmers in Colorado. It was my assumption that they purposely left black people out. And that wasn't the case. When my dad took me out there, it was with open arms and they showed us everything, like literally
Right.
everything. So, this thought that nobody wanted you there, I don't know if it was made up or, was it true? But either way, I was there and my experience
Mhm.
wasn't negative. So, it didn't matter if it was true. At the end of the day, I've been able to do a lot of great work with people not my same skin tone, my same skin tone, like people all over just by being an open and transparent person and being willing to learn and standing my ground as well. Sometimes you may feel like somebody's coming at you away because you're a woman or because you're black. But like I
Yes.
said, whether they are or they're not, my task is to always get the job done.
At the end of the day, that's all we want to do is get the job done. That to you, you're one of the few, and I'm very, very thankful because that lets me know that the racism and the gender, how to say, setbacks, if you will. Because being a woman, I know for myself, I, being in the agriculture industry, we're not taken seriously. We are not respected the same as men. I don't care if we're, how would I say, I've had more discrimination even against me by my own race,
Right.
specifically men. Just because oh, you're a woman, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just nagging or whatever. Just give them a little bit. Although we're doing triple the work than their friends or whomever, that's part of the discrimination that we're trying to stop. As well as if you're coming up against another woman. I found that Caucasian women or even other women, black women, if you will, I've been discriminated against them because they're like, well, she's getting too much. Although you have organizations that get 50 million a year, and that's what I'm trying to get past right now to be a part of that amended so our children and our women can have the same opportunity. The women can educate the children and be the nurturers that we are. But I mean, what you're saying is so true. When you find good people to work with, it doesn't matter what color they are. If they want you to help you, they're going to help you. And if they don't, they're not. And it's so
That's right.
unfortunate that, again, I said I see a lot of discriminatory actions coming on or going on within our own race, which I don't want to drill too hard down on that because that's their problem. And we're changing it anyway because
Yeah.
new generations do new things.
I think
You
it's
know?
important for people to speak up in that moment, like in any
Yeah,
moment that they feel discriminated against, that they need to start speaking up. Because what I'm realizing is a lot of assumptions being made, but nobody ever speaking to them. And then you actually have a conversation with the other side. It's like, well, I wasn't aware of this. And whether they were or were not, it's like, did you ever give the people an opportunity to have that dialogue with you? And I
exactly.
think we have to start having uncomfortable conversations. We're in a society of coddling, meaning we just call stuff toxic or, discriminatory. I'm not going to
Just
deal with
off the
that.
cuff, just yes.
But it's like, how do you transcend it from that perspective? If you never touch it or put any energy into it, it's going to stay
At
what it
that
is.
time, right?
Right.
Don't carry it with you because that's
That's
gonna
right.
pollute the rest of the atmosphere and the environment. That you're gonna tag someone or a group of people that you just had that one mishap with. And that's what we try to deal again. That's another great point that we are trying to teach. Deal with the situation now. In the now. Whatever's going on, deal with it and move on. Because we don't have any time to be going back and forth and marching and all that. We don't have time. Now all that is okay, but we do not have time. We need to deal with it at that time and go on and try to make something happen that's going to benefit many. And that's one of the issues that I know that I see in my culture or our culture is that we don't reach for many, we reach for a few or ourselves.
That's
And that has caused our race or minorities to be in the status quo where we are right now, behind on every level, because we don't do big movements like what we're trying to do now. Get in the forefront, understand policy, get involved, be at the table consistently. That's another show with consistency, and I'm trying to find that special person to bring that training, if you will, about consistency. What do you feel the hardest part of your farming? What is the hardest part do you feel in this industry for you? What is it?
And I'm gonna go back to answer your question too. So I'm not sure if I'm a first generation farmer. That's an honest answer. I'm not sure because
Okay.
I'm still learning my family history. What
Okay.
I do know is that I have family in Alabama. I had Gullah Geechee family in South Carolina, and I'd like to learn more about them. I have a lot of nurses in my family, and then on my dad's side of the family, they're networkers, so they like to grow relationships. And I always say that at our events, I grow relationships, not plants.
Okay.
So
Okay.
last year I grew some okra, a
Okay.
moringa tree, and I think it was peppers
Okay. Did
and
you
greens.
utilize any of your hemp products while doing that? Because I've heard of hemp fertilization or enriching the soil.
So there's two things. There could be soil remediation, which would be an excellent project for farmers if they just want to play around with their growing capabilities of it without trying to sell it. That's right. Just throw a couple of seeds in there, see what happens, and then till it back into the land. And it is supposed to help with two things. My dad always talks about carbon sequestration, which I can't really speak to, but there's some
Where do we get the
research on that.
seeds? That's how ignorant I am. Where do people buy hemp seeds to do the actual soil amendments or enrichments?
So there are multiple seed companies, but I would suggest you go to, I can't remember her name, but the lady who was just at our conference from Illinois.
Oh, okay, yeah, most definitely. You're
She
talking
has
about Miss
seed.
Deborah. Uh,
Yes.
yes.
A mountain, green mountain.
Oh, Natasha. But her
Yes.
organization is actually is who she's with is the Green Rush Organic Farms.
Her, yes. Support her because she is a woman farmer
Most
and she's a
definitely.
hemp farmer. Then there's Miss Gilliam down here in Georgia,
Okay.
Gilliam's Community Garden,
I
who's
definitely
also a
understand.
woman farmer. Then you
Uh-huh.
have Farmer Mills, who was on your show.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, all three
Okay.
women of color hemp farmers. There's the Green Heifer Hemp. I mean Green Heifer Farms. Excuse
Okay.
me. And then I would say Green Toad Hemp Farms here in Georgia.
Okay. And so when I order, because I am very, very elementary with this. So when I order the seed, I would say I want seed to help amend my soil. Like right now, I would want to do something in our high tunnels because it's going to get cold and the crop would make it because it like we really have ice and snow here. So how would I ask? Because I want to educate myself as well as the viewers when I
Well, there
order.
wouldn't be a special genetic. The plant itself is what can do that for you. So you would maybe want to have a conversation with them about what your end goals are, and they could best advise you on which genetic would go with that, especially with them knowing the soil type in your area, um, and your water source and how you plan on growing it. But there's also, Hemp Inc. They have some stuff.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to think who else. NOCO is a group of people. NOCO.
Well, I mean, like I said, I'll reach out definitely to the women that who I've actually interviewed on here and support their businesses.
That's
But
right.
I really want to encourage everyone should try to grow some hemp and when just to start testing and learning about the plant, the herb, if you will.
Well,
Because
pause. Let's check on the legality of it in your state. What are
okay,
the licensing requirements? Because in Georgia, you have to pay $50 per acre. And that's just if you want to grow it, but it's
okay,
$50,000 for initial license, 25,000 annually for a processing license, which is one of the highest fees in the nation. So in Alabama and Tennessee, their laws aren't that strict. Same for North Carolina, South Carolina. So you really just need to look at your state's laws. Because it's
you have to
not
go in and
consolidated
fertilize the
federally.
soil.
Hmm.
You have to even to fertilize the soil. You still need to get a license. Okay.
Yes, because if you're handling different parts of the plant based off of the policy in your state,
Yes.
you might have to be licensed.
Okay.
So it
That's good.
varies by each state. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell them this is standard nationwide because that would be a lie. There are no national standards. What the Farm Bill did was say, hey, you could do this, this, and this. Now each state go make your own rules.
Wow. So we really need to go back to the table and get a federal uniform system, if I'm hearing
Yeah,
you correctly.
that's right. That yes, regulatory compliance is huge. There are a lot of lobbyists in DC who go who go and write some policy, but usually it doesn't have groups like ours at the table. And so that's the deficit in these things that are being proposed. Us literally being at the table versus expecting somebody to speak on our behalf, because they're in policies or because they're a senator or they don't know. Sometimes they're not even capable of doing what we're asking because they're
Right.
minorities in their Senate. So state
Right.
cannabis regulations are important and state hemp regulations are important. Knowing if it's falling underneath the Department of Agriculture or underneath health committees,
Hmm.
from a policy standpoint. I'm giving farmers right now a list of things they should be aware of so then they could align with these types of people as they're building stores, as
Right.
they're starting to farm, as they're starting to try to build their distribution networks, and potentially Delta 8 gets banned. Remember, we said we'd get back to
Hmm.
Delta 8.
Right.
Um, and
Can you
understanding
talk a
what
little
any
bit
of
about
that
Delta
means.
8? Can you talk a little bit what Delta 8? Because I want to understand that more too. The Delta 8.
So, Delta 8 is a synthesized version of THC.
Huh.
And remember, we said THC is the chemical from the plant that makes you intoxicated,
Right.
you know.
Hmm.
And so to have a synthesized version of an intoxication chemical, me personally, I'm not a fan of it. However, there are lab technicians who said it's not that dangerous. It's healthy and it's been helping people. People with arthritis have had good benefits from it. People who are stressed out or suffering from depression, they have had good benefits as well.
Hmm.
Me personally, I didn't have a good experience with one brand, and I found out why. So Delta 8 is not regulated. They didn't even consider it in the Farm Bill. And
Mm.
so now that we have Delta 8 products, because Delta 8 is also not federally illegal, let's be clear.
Wow.
Delta 9 is federally illegal, and Delta 9 is naturally occurring. Delta 9 is THC. So Delta 9 is naturally occurring. Delta 8 is not. What they have to do is take the hemp plant,
Mm-hmm.
wash it with acetic acid, and clean it again to make this end isomer, which would be Delta 8.
Hmm.
If they do not have a good source as far as flushing the acetic acid process, there could be up to 15%, if not more, contaminants in there. Because again, this is not a regulated product,
Oh,
it's not a
wow.
regulated isomer. And so the danger is not in consuming Delta 8, it's in
Mhm.
consuming Delta 8 with 15 to 20% of unknown factors in it. So, we've made it a point, me and my dad, to try to find the cleanest sources of Delta 8. So
Mhm.
then if it does end up in our community, it's not this essentially dirty Delta 8 that would have bad effects on people. So
Right.
we just have to be mindful. I'm not saying Delta 8's bad. What I'm saying is if it's not properly lab tested and the process that the manufacturer who's making the products is not clean, that you may have some negative effects. And so we just need to be mindful of that, because if we're doing all of this advocacy for hemp, just natural hemp, and then we have this synthesized product come in giving people adverse reactions because it's not regulated and we don't know what this 15 or 25% variation is,
Mhm.
that would mess up all of our advocacy.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Do you know of any women-owned or minority-owned lab testings that do this type? It just in the United States.
I don't.
Wow.
I don't.
We
Not for
definitely.
hemp and cannabis specifically. And that does not mean they don't exist, but here we are in the show saying, bring them out. If you're here,
Most
comment
definitely. We
below.
want to know where you are because we need more of them across the country. Because we
Yeah.
know mostly in the minority communities, cannabis is very, very used very often, I should say, or are highly used. I'm trying to see, Kat says, can you speak to what some of the effects may be in Dirty Delta? Okay, you want to speak to that?
I
Miss Erica?
can. And hey, Dr. Erica, how are you doing? She's a genius, you
Dr.
guys.
E.
She is such a genius. Oh my
Yes, she
goodness. But
is. Honey, I love it.
so for me personally, I hallucinated. And I believe in plant medicine. I have experienced plant medicine. I've never ever had the effect that I had with this dirty Delta 8.
Really?
I sweated, my stomach hurt, I felt nauseous. I had
That's
to,
yes. I feel like I would be like that.
but I've never experienced this with plant medicine before. And so that's what really bothered me, because weed and cannabis and hemp has this dirty connotation as far as they'll get you high, it's the devil's lettuce and all of these types of things. And I've never experienced that. But then to have something that's technically legal
Mm,
make me feel sick and nauseous because it's synthesized in a lab. That's ridiculous. It's like why are we allowing synthesized chemicals to be legal versus just allowing the naturally occurring Delta 8? That's bothersome to me.
so, like here, I'm going to use Oklahoma where I am. On every other corner, there's a actual what do they call them? Dispensary.
Hmm.
So, in these dispensaries, could they have the Delta 8 variant there? I mean, should we ask or should we?
Not the variant.
How do you say it? How variant?
We throwing the coronavirus in with another Delta variant.
I don't know as far as the uh, that yeah, that's a negative connotation. I'm so sorry. Well, the
I'm not bothered by it.
Delta 8. How, do you go in and say, "Hey, is this Delta 8?" How do we know? This is what we got to educate our people on because this is serious. If people don't know, you could like I mean,
This
go
is the
off and be
interesting
really
part.
sick.
Well, it depends on which state you're in because certain states that have legalized cannabis programs, they're
Mhm.
not allowing them certain shops to have hemp as well. So it depends on what state you're in. If
Okay.
they even allow you to sell hemp products too, hence the are the programs falling underneath agriculture, the consumer
Hmm.
type of thing, or the medical model as far as with the health department and DPH. That makes a difference from state to state to know where your policy should be coming from, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
It
So here
definitely.
in Georgia, we're trying to see if it's going to stay underneath Department of Agriculture or is it going to go to the health sector.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes a difference in how the conversation will have to be structured to protect the parts that should be protected, but also warn people about negative effects potentially.
Right.
um Three things. I've
Hmm. You
like
are
I said,
awesome.
regulations we
Keep
need to
bringing
be
it on.
really
Bring it on. Educate. Love
we
it.
need to focus on regulations. Like, what is safe? We don't know what Delta 8 is really. I mean, we know that it's acetic acid washed hemp, basically.
Mm.
What are the long term effects of it? Versus saying, no, we can't have it or ban it. Maybe they should do a research study on it. That's what colleges and universities are supposed to do, research and development. And so I would suggest trying to partner with maybe a local institution, see
Most
if they're flexible and what they're willing to do with you to start gathering data and research, whether it's official or unofficial. You could
definitely.
always support programs with data. So as minorities, we need to start making data because that's really where the money will be for us as far as making your programs, making sure you have data points to support those programs and have a narrative that matches your action. Therefore, we won't be looking for just end products to sustain our hemp businesses. We have real sustainable ways. And when I say
Yeah.
sustainable, I mean from a business standpoint, because if you have data points, you can get government contracts. If you have data points, you could get grants. If you have data points, you could get private funding. If you have data points, you could get
Most
equity
definitely.
in businesses. So we need to be making data points right now as minority business participants, agribusiness and business in
Mhm.
general, for us to have financial sustainability without having to ask for a handout, because there's more government contracts right now than there are entities signed up for
Mhm,
contract.
mhm. So, would it be fair to say that partnering with a college, and this is I'm just going for our organization, partnering with the college, getting the data, being able to understand, like doing a study just within our states. What does these dispensaries, what do they actually sell to make it safe to the public? Now, I mean, I don't know if this would be stepping on toes, but this is on the health aspect of it. Partnering with them, partnering with the health departments, finding out what's in our communities, what's on these corners that these dispensaries are selling. And am I correct in hearing you correctly?
Absolutely, and be a part of that process. Meaning, if you find out, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Say it because
Meaning,
it's
if
going
you
on.
find out, you support a product, you find out it's healthy, make sure you become a distributor of that. Make sure you make some money off of that. So you're not just promoting other people's products for free as a brand ambassador, but you're not being captured as a brand ambassador in the narrative of the program.
Right.
Back to, don't just jump onto somebody's bandwagon. This is a great product. They're awesome people. You
Yeah.
could do community work. But if we're talking about sustaining ourselves in this industry, understanding that eventually the FDA, DEA, and the USDA will be a part of
Okay.
these processes, to even have a laboratory, there's a DEA certification that I believe is $1 million or higher, which speaks to why you don't see certain people in certain positions.
Mm-hmm.
Using usually licensing is used as a tool to block people out. Back to
Wow.
Georgia's $50,000
Most definitely.
processing fee, and understanding that, saying, hey, that might not be where we need to invest the most of our time and resources. Look at ancillary services agritourism, because that's a
Mhm.
huge thing now, and
Yeah.
really creating models to sustain experiences. That's my entire business model, creating experiences to capture data for us to scale our activities.
Most definitely. Dr. Corey just now chimed in from Nashville, Tennessee. You want to go ahead and answer his question or
He made
see?
a comment. He said that there is a black gentleman who owns the testing lab in Nashville. He also has the DEA certification. So if we could get his name and his contact information.
We definitely need to connect with him because that could be a model as well as an educational piece that
Mm-hmm.
people will feel comfortable because that's one of the things I know that I tell with our government contracts and grants. Most people like to see people that look like them educating them because they trust them. It's a trust factor. There's been so many things that has gone on in our history that has caused us not to trust certain people, even within our own. But when someone has a certification in something like this with having a lab, Dr. Corey, we thank you so much for putting that out there and letting us know. And also, we will have him on the show as well because he is an actual he produces a product. He actually sends me some of his products that helps with my arthritis. I have rheumatoid, and I definitely can
Mm-hmm.
say it does help. As well as I take it as a supplement in the mornings, just as an immune, um, booster to try to make sure I don't have any deficiencies in my immune system. Well, we're coming toward the end, Alexis, but I want you to leave some words. You've left so many words and nuggets of wisdom, but just to the next generation, what would you say to young people, younger than yourself, because you're young, how would you suggest they get involved in the hemp industry?
Connect with a local farmer,
Uh-huh.
most definitely. See what they're already doing before you even intertwine hemp into the conversation. See what they're actually doing.
Right.
See what things they need help with. And then figure out how the hemp industry, not just the hemp plant itself, how the hemp industry can aid in that deficit that
Girl,
you
you
see.
about to speak. That is just as simple and as pure as we can get it. And that's what we want our young people to understand. Getting into the agriculture industry is the most sustainable industry you could ever get in. And there are 1,000 careers in the United States agriculture industry that we're not even touching upon. I'm not even, like you said earlier when we started, we are international, but I would tell any young person in your career, you want to make sure you connect yourself with agriculture. For some reason, due to where we came, slavery and on through, it had a negative connotation to it. What National Women in Agriculture, what your organization as well, what we try to show and make sure people understand, it's an industry that you will always be able to make a living, and we can't be on the earth without it. So it will behoove anyone not to be involved in agriculture or now involved in the hemp industry because it is truly the most natural way of living on this earth. And last week, Miss Deborah Allen from Chicago gave a great example that it went back to before Christ, that it was here. And the history of it, it just blew me away. I'm at the end. Do you have anything that you want to add? If there's some questions out there you want to answer, just anything you want to add to the show.
There's a couple of things. So I met a young lady. Her name is Loretta, and she spoke to me about plant life intelligence. And so, really looking at everything around us, including the soil, as a living technological organism. And when you intake it into your body, it's like you feeding your computer information, you're feeding your body information from what God created with the natural elements. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, how important that is to some people, but what we're saying is nourishing your body from a standpoint beyond I'm eating or this is a tomato, and understanding the process that it took for it to get to that point to then
Mm-hmm.
nourish your body and really honoring and respecting that versus looking at it as, just a plant or just a commodity, something we could sell. And from a capitalistic standpoint, these are real resources from a biological level in a world where we're every day we're losing the real world to metaverses, virtual reality, and all, 3D printing. They're 3D printing food. I saw this on CNN. So when we're talking about
Wow.
touching the soil and sustainability, even
Mhm.
cryptocurrency or any type of currency would have to be backed by an asset. Hemp
Right.
could be that asset. Your crops could be that asset for you
Mhm.
to really have ownership of your life. We're not just talking about sustainability of the environment and the air. We're talking about sustainability of your spirit, of your well-being, of
That
your
is
mental health, of your nourishment. And so that's why the work that we do with your organization is so important to me. Prior to joining this organization, even though I knew better, my brain registered meat with Kroger. Like Kroger was the starting point of the meat,
yes.
not the seed that bared the cow that then was harvested and a farmer or somebody took care of and then got it to this point. All of that had not been captured. Remember, we talked about capturing data and narratives. These
Yes.
are narratives that have been silenced through what I call PTSD, post traumatic slavery disorder. We
Mm.
don't want to talk about agriculture anymore. We don't want to be looked at as a slave or a piece of bread. At the end of the day, we were the best at this, which is why we were chosen. We were chosen people to to be stewards of the land.
That's it.
So for the youth, I think it's important that we start making that the programming, the narrative, not just grow a plant, but be a steward of the land that sustains your well-being in your life literally. And I think people would take it more seriously as far as it's not just farming, it's not just gardening, it's not us just doing community work. We're literally making sure that generations after us will be able to breathe air, have water, have food, and know how to sustain biologically and not as a robot.
You have to excuse me. There's something that has really triggered my allergies, and I am so sorry to the viewers, but that's just something that I suffer with, and I'm hoping that I can connect to something with hemp that can help with my allergy situation, because I
Okay.
am going to, like you said, a holistic side where I'm taking care of my body as a walking example, and I'm starting with the hemp whole herb, if you will. I like to use it as an herb because it gives it more of a, how would I say it, a safe health definition, if you will, because that's where when I start talking hemp, people are like, no, I'm not trying to get high. I'm not into that.
Right.
So, whatever it takes to make them understand hemp is good for you. You have to understand it's natural. It's not, it's from the soil. It's something that God gave us to live healthy by. Are there any other questions on there? You want to go ahead and speak?
I will say, look up an endocannabinoid system, everybody. A endocannabinoid system. Google it. If you can't spell it, say it on your phone. Do it with me now. Google endocannabinoid system, and it will teach you about your CB1 and CB2 receptors. This will be an excellent conversation for you to have with anybody who opposes hemp. Say you want to talk to your family about investing into it, and they go, I don't want to be bothered with that high hemp stuff. Show
Right.
them an endocannabinoid system.
I love
That's really
it.
for cannabis. It's really for cannabis, but it will open up their mind to the fact that there are systems in your body that receive the chemicals from both the hemp and cannabis plant. So when you say I don't want a part of that, it's like saying I don't want a part of health. I
Right,
don't want a part of
exactly.
a healthy body.
Exactly. And listen, I am just always so overwhelmed with you with goodness that comes from your soul. And that's the best way to say it. I don't have to it's just, I'm overwhelmed how young you are and how intelligent you are and how you're so in tune with life. And that's the reason I personally, when I want to know something and really broke down into simple, I come to you because you taught you of course you have a very extraordinary vocabulary. This because some of the stuff I'm doing Indo, some. So I'm glad we got this recorded. But and like I said, I had the pleasure of meeting your dad when I was in Atlanta a couple of weeks, and I definitely see where you get your intelligence and your inheritance of this with him being Coach Harris. You guys are marvelous. I thank you so much for being on the show. You all, her actual contact information is right there. Consulting Harris. Also, my assistant's getting ready to come and put something in the actual chat, so you could have the information for her. I'm sorry, what are you saying?
What's her contact information?
What is your contact information again, Alexa? She's going to type it in so the viewers can see it, because you are
So
a consultant.
you can contact me at Alexis at Consulting Cares, like you see at the bottom of the screen at consultingcares.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook as well at Consulting Cares to the left corner. And then my website is www.consultingcares.com. So that's how you can contact me. Make sure you guys join as a member today if you're not a member already of the National Women in Agriculture, as well as the Georgia Women in Agriculture. Thank you to all of my collaborative partners here in the state of Georgia who support my movement, as well as everybody like Dr. Steele, the Hemp Innovation Challenge, and Georgia Hemp Association. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. One last thing for you, because I just want to put this in here and make sure people understand. Part of our sponsorship, and the reason we're able to do this, is thanks to the USDA Farm Service Agency, that's FSA. That's one of our strong partners slash sponsors of this show, as well as USDA NRCS, that's Natural Resource Conservation Services. If anyone that's out there listening or want to get involved in agriculture, in the hemp industry, one of the first places you have to go to become certified or do anything in the United States when it comes to agriculture is stopping first at Farm Service Agency and getting your farm number or getting certified some way. And we also help with that organization. Also, National Resource Conservation Services, they're able to come out and do a free land assessment to help you with your farm agriculture business plan. Again, you guys, like I always say, it's always good to make that bag when you're in ag. You guys, thank you very much for being a part of our show. Thank you for making it grow the way it is. I never knew that it was going to grow and keep going, because literally now we do have some corporate sponsors that's looking at us, as well as some big radio stations that's looking to bring us on. And with that, I can have Alexis, the Deborah Allens, the Corys, all these as our experts, as well as now we found out we have a lab in Nashville, Tennessee. That's big. That is big. That is big. So again, thank you. Bless you. I'll be in touch soon to get ready to start our policy movement. Thank you very much.